Alright guys, we're back in my garage for another video, and today we're going to be talking about the BMS transmission cooler. This is something that's relatively new to the market, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it, so in this video I just kind of want to help answer those so that you guys can know if this is something that's actually needed for your build, how it works, and what the benefits are. So hopefully this will help you out if you're looking at this product. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So first of all, let's talk about our factory system. I think this is something that a lot of people don't actually realize, but every single B58 with the ZF8 transmission comes with a factory transmission cooler. So I know a lot of people have asked, do I need a transmission cooler? Like, how do I make sure that my transmission temps don't get too hot? BMW already thought about this. I think most people are looking for a more conventional cooler mounted up in front of your car, but it's actually mounted underneath your car, very close to your transmission. It's very similar to the oil cooler for your engine. So in this case, instead of having like a big core with airflow passing over it to help cool off your transmission oil, in our cars, it's actually a small compact heat exchanger, and transmission oil flows through on one side and coolant flows through on the other side. So obviously a lot of things on our cars are moving over to this kind of air to water or water to water system. BMW and a lot of other manufacturers see this as a very efficient way of managing heat, especially for something like your transmission fluid, for a couple different reasons. First of all, coolant is much less viscous than oil, so it heats up faster than oil. And when you use that in your heat exchanger, the coolant can actually transfer some heat to your oil to help it get up to the operating temperature more quickly. And I guess this is something that a lot of people don't think about a lot, but cooler isn't always better. We know that you want to get things up to an operating temperature before you beat on it, and your transmission is the exact same way. So you don't just want it as cool as possible, you want to help make sure that it maintains a nice operating temperature. And that's another benefit of coolant. It's not just able to help it get up to an operating temperature more quickly, but it's also able to help it maintain that operating temperature more consistently. So this is a really nice feature to have. It's a really efficient system. And on top of that, BMW also has a transmission cooler upgrade. So I actually have one on my 340i. If your F30 or F32 came with the track handling package, it should have that extra cooler. And some other MT40s and M140s also got it as an option, depending on how you built up your car. But this extra cooler in front of the car is actually just another heat exchanger for coolant. So I know some people think it's a more conventional transmission cooler and the oil is actually flowing through it, but what this is actually doing is helping the coolant have an extra opportunity to get as cool as possible before it's sent to the heat exchanger for the transmission oil. So again, it's just another heat exchanger that's a part of your engine's cooling circuit, but it gives you just a little bit more cooling so that the coolant is as cold as possible when it's reducing the temperature for your transmission fluid. So all in all, BMW, I think, has a really nice, efficient cooling system for the transmission, but there's always an opportunity to improve, and that's where BMS comes in. So basically what the BMS system does is it separates the coolant in your transmission oil. So it's actually going to block off that part of the circuit and run a new set of lines from your transmission to this cooler that's mounted in front of your heat exchanger. So it's going to mount right behind the left-hand kidney grill in front of your car, and you can see kind of how it looks behind your bumper. It's a really big core, and it's going to basically do that direct cooling to the transmission oil. So now you're no longer putting added stress on the engine oil to cool off the transmission. It's going to be a completely separate circuit, and you can see how big the core is. It allows a lot of airflow and a lot of oil so that you can get as much cooling as possible. This helps with a couple different things. Obviously, having such a big core can help increase your cooling, and also it helps add additional capacity. So you're going to have an extra 2 quarts of transmission fluid in your system now. Again, just providing a bigger heat sink so that there's more heat that can be absorbed, and it'll help keep the oil at a better temperature more consistently. Now, BMS has actually been testing this for the past year on their shop car. They have a big boost turbo kit on the car. It's making over 700 wheel horsepower. And even with the stock factory HP50 and this transmission cooler kit, it never experienced any slippage. So I think this is definitely something that can help, especially if you're at the limits of your transmission. Keeping that oil a little bit cooler will help extend its life, minimize the wear that you could be experiencing, and just overall help it stretch a little bit longer. Now, they did some testing in the half mile and they saw two big improvements. The first thing that they noticed was that at the start of the run, the transmission fluid was at a cooler temp. So even after back-to-back runs, the transmission cooler was able to keep the temperatures down. Then at the end of the run, they were seeing temperatures that were as much as 30 degrees hotter with the factory transmission cooler setup. So you're basically able to see up to 30 degrees Fahrenheit of reduction after one of these really long passes with multiple gear wide open throttle shifts. So this is a really big deal. Obviously, you want to be able to make sure that you're keeping your transmission as happy as possible, especially when you're pushing that much power. And they felt like that was integral to keeping the transmission together as long as it did. Now, a couple things to note. So it does actually include a thermostat. So this thermostat will prevent any transmission fluid from going to the front of the car until it's above 165 degrees Fahrenheit. It just prevents it from experiencing any cooling until it gets up to the correct operating temperature. After it gets up to above 160 degrees, then you'll begin having some flow through the heat exchanger at the front of the car. So especially in the winter, this will help just prevent you from having a bunch of fluid that's just being super cooled and making the transmission take forever to get up to temperature. Now with this thermostat, you know that you're getting up to operating temperature as quickly as possible, and then you'll still have the extra cooling when you need it. On top of that, because of the location of the heat exchanger, it does allow you to run front mount intakes. So most of the front mount intakes mount tucked behind the right side kidney grill on the front of the car, and this is going to be on the left hand side. So you can actually run a front mount intake and a transmission cooler without any interference. The only thing that they're still working on right now is confirming fitment for cars that already have the factory transmission cooler upgrade. Obviously, it's going to have to replace it in some fashion, and that will need some additional lines to help make sure that the coolant is still flowing freely as it's supposed to. So for now, it's not designed to fit those cars, but they're working on a system that can help retrofit it on those cars as well. Another thing that we just have to mention is it does not fit cars with a manual transmission. Those cars do not come with a factory heat exchanger, so it doesn't have the ports that are designed to basically just plug in this kit and retrofit it for the additional cooling. So for manual transmission cars, there's no options yet. This is only designed for cars with the 8-speed. So now the big question, who actually needs this? And like I said, if you have a high horsepower car that's pushing the limits of the HP50, this is definitely something that can help it hold on for a little bit longer. It's not always a good idea to push it to its absolute limit, but it does seem like this helps raise the limit so that you can make more torque safely without risking your transmission breaking. On top of that, they recommend it for people that are doing track duty. So if you're going multiple laps around a track, like an actual road course, and like I said, you're doing wide open throttle shifts back to back to back for 15 or 20 minute or more sessions, then this is definitely something that can help keep things in check. We do have a lot of tools that can help you determine if this is even an issue. So I recommend using your preferred tuning app and logging your actual transmission temps. Typically, this is just like oil where you don't really want to see it more than like 230 to 250 degrees. But you also want to make sure that this oil can cool down quickly when you're like in a cool down lap or circling back to the pits. So if you see any signs of heat soak where the transmission temps just stay elevated, or you see those kinds of temperatures when you're doing back-to-back pulls or going around a road course, this is definitely something that can help. On the BMS shop car, their temperature stayed in the 180s. So obviously it was working very well, you know, even below 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's something that you're probably not going to experience with a high horsepower car, especially when you're beating on it. So yeah, that's just kind of the feedback that I have on the transmission cooler kit. For most people, if you're just on a stock turbo, stage 2 plus regular setup, it's probably not really going to benefit you, especially just for daily driving. The stock system is extremely efficient, but this is something that's designed to help people stretch out the life of their HP50 when they're really beating on it with a lot of power, a lot of wide open throttle shifts, and just really working the transmission to its maximum capacity. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I hope this video helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.